9. Time slowed. I flailed, my arms swinging from side to side as I fought to regain my balance. I didn't. I crashed down several rungs, bumping my head as I went. With my last bit of strength, I grabbed onto one of the rungs with 2 fingers. Ian's voice called from below. Use the harness. The harness. Of course. I fumbled for the grappling hook with my other hand and threw it into the tower. It connected with one of the metal rungs. I pulled the cord to test if it would hold. It did. The knot in my stomach unclenched. I clambered back up the tower, wiping the sweat from my forehead. At least I wasn't freezing anymore. I breathed a sigh of relief. My comp was still connected to the dish via my cable. Fastening myself to the tower with the grappling hook, I watched the patrols out of the corner of my eye. I swallowed hard. They weren't slowing down. Focus, I turned my attention back to the comp and shuddered when I saw my battery indicator. 1%. The reboot progress bar was at 33%. I wiggled the cable on the dish, but nothing happened. The satellite didn't seem to have any residual power after all. My comp was about to die, and the patrols would be here soon. In my frustration, I slammed my fist into the dish. At once, my comp's battery indicator flashed green. I gasped and let out a shaky laugh. It's charging. Scanning the tower for Ian, I locked eyes with him and gave him the thumbs up. We've got power. Now, the next problem. The safety patrols. I opened the command terminal on my comp and typed in a few lines of code. If I could only listen in on the patrol's comms, then I'd know for certain what we were facing. But the tightness in my stomach told me this wasn't just a routine inspection. It was more like an early morning raid. After a few minutes, my comp beeped and static sounded from the small speaker. High-risk target. Vega is extremely dangerous. Shoot on sight. Eliminating the target is the highest priority for General Horatio. I repeat, shoot on sight. The target is extremely dangerous. I shut the sound off, my knuckles turning white. I was right. Every patrol in the second city had orders to come after me. All the evidence pointed toward me. My body was missing. The timeless woman surely reported me, and Ito must have come to and remembered our encounter by now. They must have figured out my profile was fake and that I'm alive. And while the reboot sequence was ongoing, it was at 42%, my comp was a beacon for my location. Even if I managed to dump my comp and make a run for it with Ian, they'd keep searching for me. And they would go after Mom and Lewis. I opened my mouth to tell Ian, but no words came out. My vision grew cloudy and my throat constricted. I lifted a hand to wipe my eyes, it came away wet. Silent tears streamed down my cheeks. A twinkle to my right caught my attention. Morning rays reflecting off the windows of the White Tower's spire momentarily blinded me. Blinking, I drank in the view before me. I'd never seen the city like this. Alleys, backstreets, and crumbling buildings, that was the Chicago I knew. Not this. From here, at the top of the satellite tower, the skyscrapers glittered in the winter sun. The early morning air cast a dewy haze over the still sleeping city. In the east, tiny waves rippled over the otherwise calm surface of the lake, its surface a steely gray. My breath caught. If the patrols captured me, I'd never again walk the streets I'd called home. Closing my eyes, I allowed the wind to blow my hair away from my face, reveling in the strange stillness that accompanied impending death. After I survived past my death day, I didn't think I'd have to go through it all again so soon. Life was a series of moments. In every moment, we had a choice. We could either do nothing, accept our fate with heads bent and arms falling to our sides. Or we could raise our heads high, step up, and fight. The future was uncertain. But what we chose to do about it wasn't. I opened my eyes, a quiet determination settling in my heart. Another day would come, with or without me. But it was in my power to make sure I would see another sunrise. I had escaped death once. Who said I couldn't do it again? But I was running out of time. The reboot progress bar was at 51%. The white sheen of the patrol's uniforms reflected the sun in the distance. They were unrelenting. I willed my heartbeat to slow and focused. What did the patrols have? My current position. When the reboot was complete, it would disappear from their devices. The problem? They'd still have my last known location. They'd sweep the entire area, the field, the trees, the forest, all of it. The edge wouldn't deter the patrols. They had orders from General Horatio himself to find and kill me. And they wouldn't stop till they did. I needed to lure them away from here. Frowning, I toyed with the comp in my hands. I couldn't disable my real location. But I could split it. A small smile curved my lips upward. Ian, I called. I'm going to confuse the patrols. I'll split the troop to look for me in 2 locations. They won't know which one is real and which is fake. They'll have to separate to check both. I paused, smirking. And I can make the fake location move. Make it seem I'm on the run. And I bet they'll peg that one as my actual location. Ian grinned. Send them on a wild goose chase. I smiled. You got it. You know this area better. Where should they go? Scanning the horizon, Ian's expression grew thoughtful. After a moment, he glanced back up at me, a twinkle in his eye. How would you like to go for a swim? I creased my brows. What? They'd never believe I'd relax. They will assume you're desperate and confused as to why you're alive. Make it seem like you're coming from the south, obviously avoiding the edge, and running east. Eventually, you'll run out of land, leaving you with one last grim act of defiance. My eyes widened, understanding flowing through me as I focused on the glittering gray lake in the distance. Ian smirked. Gone. Without a trace. They'll comb the lakeside for hours, but no one will dare go into the lake itself. Not even their latest equipment would survive that level of corrosion. The tension eased in my shoulders. Genius. Yesterday morning, I started the day in disbelief that I had escaped death. Now, I had to fake it. I got to work, typing in command after command in my terminal. Ian's solution of luring the patrols toward the lake was a good one. But it would only deal with half of the troop, and only for a while. It still didn't solve the problem of the patrols who would continue making their way here, toward my real signal. And the only way of eliminating my signal was with the reboot, currently at 63%. Biting my lip, my fingers hovered over the keys as my mind cycled through the possibilities. I could take Ian's plan a step further. If I timed it correctly, I could make both signals disappear at the same time. I blew into my hands to force some warmth into my frozen fingers. It would be tricky, but it was worth a shot. I ran over the steps in my head, chewing on the inside of my cheek while keeping one eye on the progress bar. The plan was heavy on assumptions. The timing had to be perfect. Not to mention the healthy dose of luck I'd need if I wanted to pull this off. How well could I predict the movements of the safety patrols? Could I think like they could? Act like they did? I wasn't military, but the military followed logic and strategy. It was like a game of chess. I had to be several steps ahead of my enemy, anticipating their next move before they'd even thought of it. My mind flashed with all the ways the plan could go wrong. But it was the only plan I had. Now, it was me against General Horatio. I took a deep breath and cracked my knuckles. Bring it on. After several minutes of furious typing, sweat trickling down my temples despite the icy temperatures, I brought up a map of the area on my comp and watched my location signal pulse. Then, as it steadied, a second signal appeared, a few miles northeast. My lips curled into a small smile. As far as the patrols were concerned, there were 2 of me. Scanning the horizon, I focused on the movements of the soldiers. At first, nothing happened. Then, my breath caught as a steady trickle began to break away from the troop. Ian, the patrols. I pointed toward the sea of white uniforms. Ian squinted against the sun, his hand over his forehead. In an instant, a grin spread across his features. They're splitting. I closed my eyes for a moment and let out a breath. It was working. Within minutes, they'd spill out onto the lakeside. Okay. Phase 2. Time to die. The reboot progress bar was at 70%. Now I'd see if time really was on my side. I carefully typed a few lines of code into my terminal, double-checking what I'd written. I only had one shot at this. Satisfied, I shifted and turned toward Ian, who was still perched several feet below me. It's ready. He gave me the thumbs up. The progress bar showed 78%. As it inched toward completion, I gazed out from the satellite tower toward the lake. As I'd hoped, the troop had split in two, with the patrols now approaching the lakeside. They scattered onto the small sandy stretch of land, just visible behind the ruined Ferris wheel, its rusted rod swaying in the wind. 84%. Come on, come on. I adjusted the course of the fake lake location, keeping it just out of the patrol's reach. 89%. I couldn't keep this up for much longer. General Horatio was bound to give the order to surround me soon. And I needed a clear shot. 93%. Nearly there. I dug my fingernails into my palms to keep my hands from shaking. Everything okay up there, Em? Yeah. 97%. The blood thrummed in my ears. If this didn't work, we were done for. I'd be responsible not just for my own death, but for Ian's, too. 98%. And I didn't dare think about what they would do to Mom, to Louis. 99%. This was it. I held my breath, my forefinger hovering over the enter button. 100%. I slammed the button, muttering a silent prayer that it would work. That they would think like I hoped they would. That all this wasn't for nothing. The dot representing my fake lake location pulsated, then moved east, stopping directly over the extensive body of water. Then, right on cue, both dots disappeared. The comp rebooted. I stared at the screen, my mouth wide open. I didn't dare let myself believe it had worked, because it wasn't over just yet. Once my comp was back on, I gingerly navigated to the command terminal and brought up the patrol's comms channel again, listening through the static. A harsh voice sounded through the speaker. Repeat, the target has been eliminated. Confirmed as dead. Cause of death, suicide by contact with the lake. Over. Copy. She won't bother us anymore. Damn fleeters, always wishing they had more time. But what do they do when they get it? Give it up like the suckers they are. Return to base. Over. I turned the comms off and glanced into the distance, toward the two groups of patrols. Within seconds, they stepped back into formation and marched northwest, toward their security compounds in the city. Away from us. A gasp escaped my lips, and my vision swam as tears welled up in my eyes. Tension eased in my shoulders as I bowed my head against the satellite dish. It worked. It actually worked. I was free. I didn't have to run anymore. Shutting my comp, I checked the battery indicator. It was now at 46%. That was more than I had since I left home. Ian, I called. We did it. They're gone. Climbing back down the tower, I took the rungs two at a time. I jumped the last few feet and landed with ease. Ian wrapped his arms around me in a tight hug, a huge grin plastered on his face. You're a superstar. My heartbeat quickened, but I accepted the compliment. You're the one who gave me the idea. I wanted to find a long-term solution, to permanently shake the patrols off. I don't know about you, but I didn't want to be looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. Ian lowered his voice. You have no idea. So when you mentioned the lake and going for a swim, it clicked. I flashed Ian a smile. And they bought it. They called off the search, and I am officially confirmed as dead. Ian laughed. Brilliant. My cheeks flushed, but I shrugged it off. All in a day's work. Now that we've got the patrols off our tail, come on, Em. Let's go. He tugged at my hand. I jerked my head up. Go where? Ian smiled. Somewhere safe. After half a day's hike deep in the woods, we reached an unfamiliar clearing. Parting the snow-covered branches, I gasped. A striking building stood before me, ancient but regal. Its impressive exterior, which was made up of hundreds of stones, was partially obscured by twisting ivy tendrils. The tip of its dome reached the topmost branches of the neighboring trees. A mid-sized stone wall, overgrown with moss, wound around the building's far side. What is this? I breathed. Home. I call it the hideout. I glanced at Ian, my eyes wide. What? Yeah. I've lived here for the past few years. Ian's eyes danced. We crossed the clearing, and Ian pulled open the ornate iron door. Its handle was embellished with a strange design, a circular snake biting its own tail. It was oddly familiar. Welcome home, Em. Warmth traveled through my chest. I'd found shelter beyond the edge, somewhere safe and new to call my own, just as Mom had asked. My heart ached for her and for Louis. I wished she could see me now, far beyond the reach of the patrols. My lips curled upward. Oh, and there's something else. Ian led me over to the far wall and pointed at a socket. It works. It may be ancient, but it's connected to the city's power grid. I dropped to my knees and connected my comp cable to the socket. My comp began charging at once. I couldn't help but laugh. As Ian strode off to gather wood for a fire ahead of our first meal together, I washed my face in a small basin in the corner. Taking a swig of water, I settled in my nook by the socket and pulled my comp close. All tension had left my body. Now that I was safe, I could explore the network in peace. The reboot was successful, and they wouldn't be able to trace me here, to the hideout. I browsed through the system, hunting for a clue about the elusive chip Ian had mentioned. After several minutes of combing through files on the city's administration, I stumbled upon an encrypted firewall. A backdoor to a backdoor. Intrigued, I tilted my body toward my comp and narrowed my eyes. After several failed attempts at using brute force to penetrate the firewall, my screen flashed green. My jaw dropped as my comp fell to the ground. Ian, I called. You'll never believe what I just found. Ian jogged over and crouched down beside me, reading over my shoulder. DDD. The Deathday database. I smiled to myself. It's been 36 hours since I was supposed to die. Now I was safe. I had found a new home, a new purpose, and a new friend. I was not alone in this. Against all odds, Ian and I had both survived past our death days. And now, we were going to find out why. We hope you have enjoyed this unabridged production of The Hacker by Kasia Lasinska. Text copyright 2021 by Kasia Lasinska. Production copyright 2022 by Dreamscape Press. All rights reserved. Thank you for listening.